Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. Still underground, still 5 minutes, and still fresh every single day. Today we're looking at verses 36 through 40. Again, we are going to see this cycle of weal and woe, but now instead of seeing the insertion of, then they cried unto the Lord, we're not going to see that because we're going to understand that it's there. Now, yesterday, we ended with verse 35. He turneth the wilderness into a standing water. And I said that after verse 34, we have a, imaginary insertion of, then they cried unto the Lord. So now let's see the continuation of that. The wilderness into a standing water and the dry ground into well springs. Look at verse 36. And there he maketh the hungry to dwell, that they may prepare a city for habitation, and sow fields and plant vineyards, which may yield fruits of increase. He blesseth them also, so that they are multiplied greatly, and suffereth not their cattle to decrease. Again, they are minished and brought low through oppression, affliction, and sorrow. He poureth contempt upon princes, and causes them to wander in the wilderness where there is no way. That's verses 36 through 40. Now we see the wheel here. The wilderness is transformed, and he does it so that there's a place for the hungry to dwell. And they are going to prepare a city. They're going to sow fields and plant vineyards that may yield fruits of increase. The cattle also will not decrease, and he will multiply them greatly. Does that sound familiar to you at all? This sounds like the history of Israel to me. They have been poor, few in number, wandering, and he gave them a land. He gave them a land of great plenty, a land where they could sow fields and plant vineyards, where they could build cities, and he actually gave them cities already built and homes already standing when they conquered the land. But something happened. They were minished and brought low through oppression, affliction, and sorrow. Why? Because of the wickedness. We go back to verse 34. A fruitful land becomes a barren place when there's wickedness there. And so because of this, we know the history of Israel, that they were poor, wandering pilgrims. They didn't have a place of their own. God gave them one. And even though they were poor, they became rich, and in their richness, they became vain in their imagination, and they stopped worshiping the Lord. And when that happened, oppression, affliction, and sorrow. So that's sort of the history that we know. Now we're headed back towards, then they cried unto the Lord again. He poured contempt upon princes. He causes them to wander in the wilderness where there is no way. Think about the history of the kings of Judah and the kings of the nation of Israel. It's not a pretty picture because some of them, now sometimes it is, but some of them were very wicked, and God did pour contempt upon them and eventually destroyed both Judah and Israel. They were completely destroyed and carried off into captivity, and he left the land barren until he brought them back again in the 500s BC when he returned them from their Babylonian captivity. Oh, and I almost forgot. Here in verse 40, we have another occurrence of that upside down and backwards letter. It occurs right at the beginning of verse 40. He poureth contempt upon princes. Again, we don't know exactly what that unusual mark means, but it's right here in the text. Maybe it's just highlighting this as sort of the pinnacle of their fall. He pours contempt upon princes and causes them to wander in the wilderness where there is no way. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow because we're going to look at verses 41 through 43, see what happens after the princes are put in contempt. I hope you'll join me then on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.